Representative Harrison, welcome to the program here. Let's start wide. How pivotal is this moment, this power vacuum that Dade Phelan's announcement has left in the legislature?
Well, it's a big victory and one that I'm proud to have helped lead the charge on. I mean, I was the very first member of the entire Texas legislature who had the courage almost 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, to publicly call for Dade Phelan to step down as Speaker of the Texas House after he presided over what I believe is objectively the most liberal session in the history of the Texas House. So it's a huge victory. It is sufficient, but I'm not sure it's necessary. Or I'm sorry, it's necessary, but I'm not sure it's sufficient yet because we still have to completely reform the chamber from what it had become, which is a corrupt den of liberal dysfunction, into one that faithfully represents the will of the voters of Texas who overwhelmingly want Republican leadership. So we've got to make sure that now that Dade's gone, that's a good thing, but we've got to make sure that we usher in a new era and bring in a Republican speaker who will respect the will of the voters and pass Republican priority legislation and stop being beholden to the radical Democrats who they cut deals with to get in charge.
And that said, Representative, who would you support then for Speaker of the House on day one?
Yeah, so tomorrow the Republican caucus is going to be gathering in Austin, and a group of us conservatives who want reform in the Texas House had a straw poll several weeks ago. David Cook won that straw poll, so I will be supporting him tomorrow inside the caucus meeting. And hopefully, the Republican caucus bylaws say that whoever wins tomorrow's, intra-party process, that Republicans should vote for that person on the floor of the Texas House. That process has never really worked out. It's kind of more theoretical than actual. What does matter is who can get 76 votes on the floor come January. That's the only thing that actually matters. And my hope, my expectation is that Republican elected officials who campaigned on preserving liberty for the next generation and fighting the leftist Democrats who threatened that, but for too many years, by the way, have been voting to empower those radical Democrats, that they will stop stabbing their voters in the back, and that the Republicans, who we have 88 members going into next session, 88 members need to vote for a Republican come January.
Does David Cook have the numbers, have the support right now to become the next speaker?
I think David Cook, what we've established is that he's got a majority right now of the Republicans in the Texas House, and we'll know a lot more after tomorrow. But what I care about is policy, shrinking government, Republicans being faithful to the voters, and shrinking, spending, low taxes, low regulation. Texas has got a reputation for leading the nation in small taxes and low regulations and limited government. But I'll be honest with you, under Republican leadership, and there was an economic analysis that just came out yesterday, it's going to shock your viewers. Under Republican leadership, government in Texas has exploded at higher rates than when Democrats ran the state. I have had it. I am sick and tired of Republicans betraying their voters. We need Texas to stop coasting on our limited government, small government, pro-freedom, pro-liberty reputation and start living up to it. And that starts by reforming the Texas House of Representatives.
Who released that study?
I'll get it to you. It's by a former friend and colleague of mine, White House economist Vance Ginn. I will shoot it to you.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Have Cassie do that, or if you get a chance to send it.
Yeah, I'll get it to you. Both me and Chip Roy broke the news together yesterday, probably midday. So this is very new. Okay. In fact, you'd probably be the first TV station to have it. We'll send it to you.
All right. Though we don't yet know for sure who the next speaker is going to be, well, what does this mean politically in the House as far as Democrats being committee chairs of some committees and for school choice?
Yeah. Well, it needs to mean the end of this completely asinine practice of Republicans empowering Democrats to leadership positions in the Texas House. What's been happening in the Texas House, and many of your viewers are going to be shocked to learn. I mean, it's the exact equivalent as if Speaker Mike Johnson in Washington asked Nancy Pelosi or AOC to chair some of the most powerful committees in Washington, D.C., right? No Republican in America would tolerate that. But under the cloak of darkness that has been happening for almost 20 years in Austin, and it's past time for that insanity to end. When you run for office as a Republican, that should mean something. So the political question, the fundamental political question, is how many elected officials who have the word Republican by their name are willing to go and cut a backroom, smoke-filled room deal with the Democrats to sell out the voters who sent them there and to betray liberty for the next generation of Texans so that they can have popularity in the swamp and the word chairman in front of their name. I care about preserving liberty and freedom for the next generation of Texans. And the political question is how many Republicans are going to fight for freedom and liberty, and how many of them are willing to sell out the future of Texas to the radical Democrats and betray their voters by continuing to let Democrats run a Republican-dominated Texas House of Representatives. That's the fundamental political question.
With Phelan out, though, does this mean school vouchers have an easier path?
It depends on who replaces him, because this is what I want people to watch out for. While I am celebrating the victory of Dade Phelan stepping down, I want to caution people that it could well be Dade Phelan's own team, own liberal team, that is orchestrating him stepping down so they can swap somebody in who's every bit as liberal, every bit as beholden to the swamp as he was. And this is going to be hard for some conservatives to understand what I'm about to say here. Dade Phelan was not the central problem in the Austin swamp. He was just the most visible manifestation of it. But the status quo that led us to people like Dade Phelan, the voters, by the way, overwhelmingly rejected this year at the ballot box in Texas and all across America. That swamp, we've got to make sure that nobody who has the speaker's gavel is beholden to that same liberal swamp again. And there's a massive effort underway right now, as I'm talking to you, by Dade Phelan's own team to put in somebody who is just as liberal or even potentially more liberal than Dade Phelan, to go cut a deal with the Democrats, grab a few liberal Republicans, and continue selling out the voters of Texas and letting Democrats control the people's house in our state's capital. And that's what I'm working every minute between now and January to make sure does not happen.
What names have you heard that might get? What names have you heard that might replace Dade Phelan?
I've heard a lot of names. One member of Dade's liberal leadership team just filed for speaker. Somebody who's arguably has a more liberal voting record than Dade Phelan, somebody who is probably as responsible or maybe the most responsible for killing key Republican priorities in the Texas House last session when he was the chairman of the Calendars Committee. So we've had at least one liberal Republican file, and we may have more.
That's Dustin Burrows? Is who you're talking about?
Yeah, the big government, big regulation, pro-COVID mandate. I mean, this is the guy, what Donald Trump is trying to do with Doge in Washington, D.C. Dustin Burrows almost single-handedly was the anti-Doge in Texas last session by killing the biggest efforts to rein in the regulatory state. Dustin Burrows kept COVID vaccine mandates in Texas. He kept Chevron deference, which empowers bureaucrats in the state. He killed the biggest efforts to rein in the power of woke, unelected leftist bureaucrats in Texas, and he has now filed for speaker. So again, if you're a Republican in Texas and you care about your state leading the nation in liberty, be on the lookout for wolves in sheep's clothing, because Dade's stepping down, but the swamp that empowered Dade Phelan is not going to let go of power without a fight.
Representative, you said last session was the most liberal in the history of the Texas House. A lot of people think that's crazy, though. What besides school choice is a Republican priority that did not get passed last session?
Well, it's objectively true. Never in the history of the Texas House has government power been wielded in such a reckless and irresponsible and destructive fashion that threatens to undermine the integrity of the state of Texas going forward, as the liberal leadership of the Texas House that impeached Ken Paxton with less due process and less evidence than third world kangaroo courts. Nothing like that has ever happened in the history of the Texas House. And then you add to that the most liberal, bloated, reckless, dangerous, big government budget busting, tax hiking budget in the history of the state that grew government over 25% from one session to the next. We did, instead of putting Texas on a path to eliminate property taxes last session, we put the state of Texas on a track to double government in 7 years. This is not my opinion. Anybody who understands economics or basic math, last session was the most liberal session objectively in the history of the Texas House, and we have got to reform that chamber and make it Republican again.
Do you think the next speaker, you know who's in that chamber, do you think the next speaker can do that?
Well, a next speaker absolutely could do it. A real conservative Speaker of the Texas House could go a long way to making Texas the bastion of liberty that everybody outside of Texas thinks that we are, but that we aren't really, because the Speaker of the Texas House, and this is unfortunate, wields tremendous power. If the Speaker wants something to pass, it will pass. If he wants something to die, it will die. And that's not the way it should be, because what that effectively means is that even though if you're one of the 30 million Texans, you think you've got a representative in the Texas House, you don't. whoever you are, whoever represents you, they don't really represent you. The Speaker of the House represents you because they control everything in that chamber. And we have this other complete absurdity of the most powerful bureaucrat in the chamber, that the parliamentarian, okay, is a Democrat Party activist hired by Dade Phelan and Speaker Bonin before him, who was a Barack Obama White House lawyer. So when people say Democrats run the Texas House, they wield the power of the Texas House, even though it's actual human beings who have the word Republican by their name who put them in power. You know, in DC, people use the term uniparty a lot, and I know what they mean, and I support that. But a lot of people are shocked to learn that in Texas, in the Texas House, we have a literal uniparty controlling our chamber because we have actual human beings with the word Democrat by their name who call the shots and are in some of the most powerful leadership positions in the Texas House. A reform-minded speaker, a speaker who actually cares about the principles that made our country great: low taxes, low regulations, private property rights, free markets, secure borders, governments that are constrained in their power by limits on the Constitution. That speaker, single-handedly, could change all that. That speaker, the Speaker of the Texas House, could take Texas from being just a state that people believe is a bastion of liberty into one that is an actual bastion of liberty and put us at our rightful place, leading the nation in the defense of freedom. Because as goes Texas, so goes the nation. And to save Texas, we've got to make the Texas House Republican again.
Last question for you.
Yeah.
Put this in context. How big of a deal is it that Phelan says he's not going to run for speaker again?
Well, it shows how effective what started out as a tiny number of us conservatives in the Texas House can be if we are loud, if we are vocal, if we are willing to put the interests of the voters who sent us there ahead of the opportunity for popularity in the Austin Swamp. Jason, I was the first member of the Texas legislature in either chamber that had the courage to publicly go out and say, Dade Phelan is bad for Texas. He needs to step down. And by the way, I did that when it was not popular to do that, okay? I did that knowing full well the consequences that were going to befall me. But the future for my 4 kids who were 10 years old and under mattered way more to me than a bunch of liberal, big government Republicans in Austin, what they thought about me or how they were going to try to, enact some kind of punishment on me. Liberty mattered too much. So it shows the power of what a small number of vocal conservatives can do, working arm in arm with grassroots activists across the state of Texas. It's a huge development. You can't understate how big it is. So we win the battle, but I do caution people, the war is still to come. We have got to make sure that somebody who is beholden to the Austin Swamp never again wields power in the Texas House of Representatives.
And you're not sold that this means that school vouchers has an easier path all of a sudden?
Well, I don't think school vouchers ever was going to have an easy path. I worked very hard with Governor Greg Abbott, whose leadership on school choice I'm grateful for, with Attorney General Ken Paxton, Senator Ted Cruz. I spent the whole primary season traveling all across the state campaigning against my incumbent colleagues who oppose school choice. But it's always going to be a challenge. The liberal teacher unions have been allowed to have tremendous power in the Texas House, and the margin is still small. And we've got to do it right. We can't pass school choice in a big government liberal way. We've got to do it in a way that empowers parents, empowers teachers, and focuses on increasing education outcomes for students, and doesn't continue just blindly throwing money at a failing government monopoly that is not even educating 25% of school children in Texas. That was always going to be a tall task. We've got to get a speaker in the Texas House committed to liberty, committed to Republican values, and committed to passing priority legislation like school choice.
Representative, good to see you again. I always appreciate the time.
Always great to be with you, Jason.